Hello and welcome everyone to Tales of a White Mage. This time I'm going to be doing a guide slash first time playthrough of the Great Gubal Library hard mode. Great Gubal Library was added in patch 3.4 as one of the optional level 60 dungeons. As usual with the Tales of a White Mage series, I will be including all of the story cutscenes and dialogue that goes along with the quest line. So if you want to see just the dungeon, skip forward to about 2 minutes of the video and that is the beginning of the dungeon. Hey there guys, and this is the beginning of the dungeon, and for your sake I've gone ahead and fast forwarded all of the trash pools because there's nothing really that special in the trash pools of the dungeon, but I figured I should fast forward this segment to make this video go by a lot quicker. And in case you're not entirely interested, here we're met up with enemies we've seen in the past, really. Nothing new here. So just dodge AoEs and AoE everything down and you'll be fine. As this was my first time in the dungeon, I am taking it a bit slow on the DPS myself. The tank has decided to pull everything, of course, naturally. I don't know, this might not be the tank's first time in the dungeon, so maybe he knows what he's doing. Since then I have run this dungeon a fair amount of times actually, because I tend to get it nearly every day in my expert roulette. And you're pretty safe to pull pretty much every trash mob between the start and each subsequent boss. And here we are at the first boss. There was no mechanics explained because it's just avoid the AoEs and DPS down the boss. There's literally nothing special about this fight at all. It's no different from one of the older like mini bosses of a dungeon, or just really just a trash mob. Simply avoid the AoEs and you'll be fine. Now this second time he does this move, it is slightly different because you see the other orange AoE. Now the book will knock you back, and then 2 2 books will appear on either side and try to sandwich you in the middle. Fortunately, there is a gap in the center where you can stand and you'll be perfectly safe from all of that. However, the knockback of the first initial book in the middle, if that knocks you into the books on either end, you will take a little bit of damage, so just try not to get knocked back into the orange AoEs. And now here we see loads of books drop, and which covers the entire arena, mind you, but they all close at separate intervals. So what you want to do is just avoid, try to stand in the AoEs of the ones that drop like after, and then run into the areas where the books have closed, and thus avoiding the AoEs. As I said, it's really simple to just avoid things and kill the boss. Now, even though the AoEs are easy to dodge, you see there that they actually do quite a lot of damage. So if you are unable to avoid stuff, try not to, because if you get hit by any of the mechanics, as you can see, the 2 DPS both have a vulnerability stack. And the more of them you get, the more damage you take, thus making it harder for the healers to really do their job. But in all actuality, it's such an easy fight. You don't need to know a whole lot about it. It's just do the usual stuff. Now, the second and third boss fights, there is actually mechanics I will need to explain, because they were needed to be explained to us as we got to them by the tank, I believe it was. Now, the next lot of trash mobs is literally that. It's just trash mobs. Nothing new. Some demon void scent stuff, some slimes, some sprites. Nothing new. We've dealt with these before in previous dungeons. So just simply AoE everything down and you'll be golden. Try not to stand in the fire, because that will actually put a slow burn on you, which can be a sooner. So if someone stands in that by accident, remember you can just use a Suna, leeches, and I don't remember what the astrologian version of that is, but you can just remove the status effect. And here there is actually a lot of enemies, so if the tank pulls everything like they did that you see in this video, be careful, because there is a lot of damage being fished out. So just make sure that you are comfortable healing big damage. And we move on to the second boss, the Liquid Flame. Obviously a relative of the Living Liquid from A3, if you all remember that. And here is the first mechanic, is basically Ifrit's plumes, I guess, or eruptions. And then there's this mechanic, which there's no real way to avoid it. It's just he will target one character and just do heavy damage to that one character. It could be any character, it could be a DPS, it could be the tank, it could be the healer. It's happened to everyone. And periodically those bursts will just do AoE damage. Again, there's no real way to avoid it. It's just try and just heal through it. And now here, you see the flame has changed form into a hand. And each player got a marker over their head. The blue markers go onto the blue circles and the red markers go onto the red circles. It's fairly simple to understand. You see there I have the sun marker, so therefore I have to run into the red AoE. That person over there doesn't know what he's doing. He's now got 2 stacks of vulnerability, because each time you mess up a mechanic, you gain a new stack. So he's going to be taking some heavy damage. And be careful with when Liquid Flame is in this form, because he will do cleaves, and that really hurts if it hits the rest of the party. Now, just like in A3, he turns into a tornado, this time made of fire, and simple science comes in handy here again, because opposites attract, and don't stand in the fire though. You see me there standing in the fire, and I get a burn because of that. Yes, you see the plus and minus symbols on the boss and each player. If the boss has a minus symbol like he does here, if you have the same symbol, you come up close, because the same magnetic field will repel and opposites will attract each other. So if you have the opposite symbol to them, you want to stand away from the tornado but not in the fire around the arena, and therefore you'll get pulled into the center but not into the fire of the center either. And that's about it for this fight. There's no other mechanics other than them, and they're pretty much just repeated until the fight is over. So just avoid the plumes and heal for everything. That's all I can say. Just heal through it and you'll be fine. And that's about it. Okay, now here is where the dungeon actually is different from the Gubal library normal mode. Before we would carry on down that hallway and carry on down the library, like downstairs. This time we actually went upstairs into the library, the nicer looking area, if some people might think. Here we're greeted with just a bunch of dolls and statues, things we've already dealt with pretty much in the past. Nothing really new here, once again. So just take care of all the enemies and you'll be fine. Just try not to get overwhelmed, because that can happen. Okay, now with that little pack down, this is the final trash of the dungeon. It's actually a behemoth. All he does though is AoE, that circle AoE we saw, as well as a raw type AoE, which each time he does puts a vulnerability stack up on each player. Luckily that vulnerability stack doesn't last very long. And once he's down, move on to the final boss of the dungeon. Okay, now for the final boss, there's actually a fair bit that the tank had to explain, so I'm going to go ahead and cut straight to the boss. We sat there for about a minute maybe, explaining like what to do, because throughout the fight the boss will drop these AoEs we see here, and they will drop a different type of AoE, although the first time is always this one. And after that it will vary up a bit. And now these, when you stand in this wind one, it gives you a levitate effect, and when the boss casts something quake, then you know you need to be off the floor. You need to be levitating to avoid an earthquake, so Simply stand in the AoE to avoid any damage from the Quake and you'll be good. Now this time he actually drops two different type of AoEs, as you can see, one dark and one like a light one. Here he just, that move you can't avoid, it's just AoE damage, just heal through it, and as you see our summoner decided to DC, so he isn't going to be avoiding anything, and there you'll see that just done like 10,000 damage to him. The boss cast Tornado, and when he casts Tornado you want to be standing in the purple or the black AoE, which gives you a heavy effect which prevents you from getting thrown up into the air by the tornado. The next one he'll follow up with the Imp. Okay, our summoner just died because of he DC'd and he was still in an Imp form. When you are turned into an Imp, you want to step into the light AoE to remove it, or if you stand in the light AoE before being turned into an Imp, it will just turn you into an Imp, so don't do that. Here, the boss summons another behemoth, and this behemoth is preparing Meteor. It actually shows up in your chat log, so many seconds until Meteor impact, and as you know from previous behemoths, when there's a Meteor impact, simply hide behind one of the fallen boulders and you will avoid it completely, otherwise that will kill you. After that, the boss will use, I think it's called Checkout, the ability again. This time he summons all three different AoEs. The Heavy, the Levitation and the Imp. Now it's your job to figure out which one you need to do, because the boss will start using his abilities at random now. See there, he used the Tornado, so therefore we needed to step into the black AoE to avoid that. So since I'm a healer, I'm not looking at the boss, but I've had to focus target the boss so I can see which ability he has decided to cast. And the darkness one, you just have to eat that. You can't avoid it. It doesn't do it a lot of damage. It's like 4,000 damage at most. It's really not that bad. And that's pretty much the whole fight. You just rinse and repeat this last phase until the boss is dead. So just keep an eye on what ability he's using and run into the subsequent AoE that corresponds with that ability. There we go. Yeah, our summoner has decided to not be DC'd anymore, so I revived him. And we got imped. Immediate imp. Thankfully the summoner actually avoided that completely. And there we have it. That is basically the whole fight. So I'm going to leave it here and I'll let you guys enjoy the rest of the video. Don't forget to hit like, favorite, subscribe, all that good stuff. And if you guys actually want more of this type of content where I'm actually talking, let me know, because I don't do this a lot when it comes to Final Fantasy XIV. I normally just do the content and put out a video, because I don't normally make a lot of Final Fantasy XIV videos. I usually just do what's new, like the main story, the Hildebrand story, the new dungeons and stuff like that. Let me know what you guys think, and I will see you all next time on Tales of a White Mage. Until then, have a wonderful day and enjoy the rest of the video. Take care. Bye bye now.